quorum at the scheduled time. And thank you for coming to the Joint Subcommittee to monitor the implementation of the West Kowloon Cultural Project. Item 1, information papers issued last meeting. We haven't received any papers since the last meeting. 2, meeting arrangement for the remainder of the 2020-2021 session. And just for information, this is the last scheduled meeting of the Joint Subcommittee in this legislative session, as the session will further extend to mid-October. So I would like to hear from members on the arrangements for the remainder of the session. The Secretariat has reserved the following time for consideration. 6th of September 2021, Monday from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m., which is just an additional sitting. The members have any views? So we all agree to this proposed time. We should invite the administration and the West Kowloon Cultural Authority to come up with agenda items. 3, update on development of the Hong Kong Palace Museum. And let's invite the administration and the WKCDA team into the room, please. So welcome to the administration and the authority team. Permanent Secretary for Home Affairs, Ms. Cherry Che, and Ms. Betty Fung, Acting CEO of the WKCDA, and Dr. Louis Director of the Hong Kong Palace Museum, and Deputy Secretary for Home Affairs, Ms. Kenny Wong. And the administration can start the PowerPoint on the presentation. Let me do some opening remarks. Today we're reporting to the panel on the latest on the Hong Kong Palace Museum. Even though the construction has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, the authority is still confident to complete on time in 2022 for the scheduled opening. The team is also preparing the pre-opening activities and setting up a professional team and organizing all kinds of exchange activities. I now invite the WKCD authority to elaborate on the contents. I'll say a few words before heading over to Dr. Louis to walk you through their PowerPoint. And back in 2017, June 29, we entered a collaboration agreement with the Palace Museum. In May 2018, we started the construction. In just 3 years, well, if we get the occupation permit by July, we managed to complete the works in 3 years' time and can be opened by mid-next year. As a world-class museum, the Hong Kong Palace Museum shall adopt innovation curation approach and come with a Hong Kong's perspective with a global vision to interpret and demonstrate Hong Kong arts and culture, and also work with the learning and outreach activities to increase the student cultural understanding of the Chinese culture. The National 45th Year Plan proposed Hong Kong to become a cultural exchange hub, and Hong Kong WKCD and the Palace Museum program can definitely make a contribution here and promote the platform for dialogue and exchange of arts and culture to promote the worldwide audiences on Eastern and Western arts and cultures. I'll now hand over to Dr. Louis to give us the latest update. Thank you, CEO. I will spend about 15 minutes to walk us through the future program for the Palace Museum. Like Ms. Fong has said, our aim is to become a world-class museum, a cultural institutions to commit to study appreciation Chinese art and culture. Besides Chinese art and culture, we have a great mission to promote advancing dialogue among world civilizations. Well, as compared to Taipei and Beijing, Palace Museum would adopt a new approach and would offer Hong Kong's perspective and a global vision. Our positioning that as a global museum, besides presenting the finest imperial court objects, we'll also be showcasing other museum collections. One of our mission is that Hong Kong has been positioned as a hub for arts and culture exchange between the mainland and the rest of the world. The future exhibition and exchanges of the HKPM shall revolve around this positioning, which will help Hong Kong to become an arts and culture hub. Besides a global vision, a museum, also a cultural resource belong to the Hong Kong people, will offer a dynamic, an innovative platform to inspire and engage the community. On education and learning, I will elaborate on how we work with schools and teachers to collaborate and to support the current school curriculum. Like Betty said, that construction started. We had the groundbreaking ceremony in 2018, and in March 2019, the construction has started. As of last November, that the building was completed. And that's what it looks like now. The facade has been completed, and for the surroundings, there are still some works underway. The HKPM occupied a very prime spot in the middle of the arts park, and that's from the southwest eastern perspective, looking to the Stonecutters Island. From the northeast, you can see this is linked to the arts park, and there'll be a cafes at the basement level. So these are the pictures taken from the different perspectives. These are real photos, not simulation. That was a nice weather today, so the picture looked rather nice. The building facade and the emergency vehicle access have been completed. The statutory inspections, including the fire service inspection, started in mid-May 2021. We expect that at the third quarter, about July and August, we'll obtain the occupation permit. And by the end of this year, we can complete the construction of the entire building. And we started the furnishings, the fitting out works. After we get the occupation permit, the Palace Museum team will start decorating the exhibition halls, for example, the installations and the multimedia programming. We anticipated that the inside and outside furnishings can be completed on the third or fourth quarter next year. The museum would will clean out the whole museum for 1 or 2 months while we are transporting the loaned eye objects to Hong Kong. So maybe by next May, the museum can be opened. Next July, rather. For governance, in a lot of public engagement sessions, we have been asked that are we a branch of the Beijing Palace Museum. The Hong Kong Palace Museum has own governance structure. Under KCDE, we incorporated the Hong Kong Palace Museum Limited. It's responsible for formulating the vision and mission and strategies, policies, and guidelines on curatorial matters. The chairman is Bernard Chen, and Vice Chairman Professor Lee Chak-fan, and other experts and social personalities as board members to formulate the policies and future operations. There will be 9 galleries, 7 of which will be for thematic exhibition lasting 1 year or longer. The 2 other galleries will be stating shorter special exhibition lasting 3 to 6 months. Of the 5 thematic exhibition galleries, will showcase the history and art treasures of the Palace Museum. Children will be related to the contemporary Hong Kong artists, and also the local art collecting culture, and will commission Hong Kong contemporary artists for modern creations and dialogue with the PM objects. The 2 special exhibition galleries will present special thematic exhibitions featuring Chinese art and arts and culture from other parts of the world. We've concluded negotiations with the Palace Museum and confirmed there will be over 800 exhibits on loan to Hong Kong. This is the largest first-scale loan since the founding in 1925. We need to finalize the list and obtain the approval from the relevant mainland authorities. The mainland authorities will conduct safety and assessment of the loaned objects. For the 9 exhibition galleries, the first to the 5th floor will be a permanent exhibition, and for 8 or 9 there will be a special exhibition galleries. On the gallery number 5, there will be traditional craft meets contemporary design. Well, this is a key part of the Hong Kong perspective. We invite Hong Kong designers and artists and curators to interpret the Imperial Court exhibits. We'll appoint a famous Hong Kong designer to interpret the objects from the Beijing Palace Museum. We'll also reinterpret the Palace Museum culture and artifacts. So these are the 800 pieces of artifacts that will be on display. They're usually featured on the introductory pamphlets to the Beijing Museum. So these are their crown jewels. I would like to thank their curiosity by lending them to us. We are positioning ourselves at a major global museum, and we carry the mission to realize the 45th year plan and turn Hong Kong into a Hong Kong arts and culture hub. On international cooperation, we formulate with a lot of measures. For example, by using the collection of the Beijing PM, our own networks, we shall work with the global institutions for strategic partnerships. For example, touring exhibitions and professional training. For the past 6 months or so, we've been liaising or reaching out to over 70 museums and collections around the world and commenced a discussion to see if they can bring their collection to Hong Kong or the mainland. At the same time, the Palace Museum collections and other museum collections to overseas. We had a very good response. And we're now formulating the overseas exhibition program and also exchange programs and attachment opportunities. The ICT is very critical to the development of the HKPM.
We will mainly feature the collections of the Palace Museum, and in the long run, we will also establish our own collection. And these will be similar to that of the Palace Museum. Well, those include works of art and antiquities, painting, calligraphy, and history and heritage. We will establish a dedicated fund for that purpose. In the initial period after the commissioning, we will count mainly on donations. And I'm happy to report to you today that some collectors are liaising with us, and they are willing to donate some of their collections to us. And they are very we are very confident about our collections, but we have to keep up the standards of our collections so that these are in line with the palace museums in Taipei and Beijing. Apart from these, we will also collect works by modern and contemporary artists who are inspired by the traditional Chinese art and culture, including collections from the PM. In particular, our young artists in Hong Kong have been most outstanding in such works. So we will consider collecting some of these outstanding works. We will also draw up the acquisition strategies, and we will set up certain protocols which will be approved by the WKCDA. Apart from collections, we will also be launching research fellowship programs. We are not just purely an exhibition area. We do have our collections, we do have our research programs, and we will be using the resources of the Palace Museum to help us take forward such research programs and fellowship programs. Last year, we have signed an agreement with the Palace Museum on such professor or fellowship programs, but because of COVID-19, the research fellows haven't been able to come to Hong Kong so far. So after the epidemic stabilizes, we hope to implement such programs. Apart from these, we would also be reaching out to international museums to take forward fellowship programs. Publication strategy, we would publish different publications to cater to the needs for diverse audiences. Some of the publications will be more scholarly in nature, while others will target students. We will publish some publications overseas, in the mainland and in Hong Kong. So we would be developing various publications. And you might also be interested in our digital policy, where we focus on digital publications. So apart from print copies of publications, digital publishing will also be taken forward. Now, I would like to say something more about the Learning Center. Well, learning is very much part and parcel of the priorities of the Palace HKPM. So we have to enhance education on Chinese art and culture in Hong Kong. On the ground floor, there will be a learning center to be established. Various activities will be organized to meet various needs. There will be a 400-seat auditorium in the learning center, and there will be the largest auditorium all over Hong Kong. There will be various performances and forums to be staged, and there are 4 activity rooms whereby students, lectures, and so on will be delivered. We hope to deliver diversified activities. Apart from Learning Center, we would also be establishing a good partnership program with schools. We would support primary, secondary schools and kindergartens in delivering visual arts programs and lessons. Our strength is that we do possess a lot of cultural resources. We have the cultural resources from the Palace Museum in Beijing and also other museums. And experts in these museums are very willing to work together with us on our education initiatives. And we are now drawing up the relevant policies, and we are going to different schools, teachers, to understand their needs. And the EDB is also involved in all of these. We will work together with them to set out policies, and resources will be devoted on that work. We would also like to establish a digital resource center whereby resources on Chinese arts and cultures will be placed. And then that will also be training for teachers. And then community engagement program. Apart from activities within the HKPM, we would like to bring Chinese arts and cultures to the community. And one of the major initiatives is the volunteer program. We will invite people from various sectors, in particular the retirees, to take part in our activities so that they can actually assist arts in various learning and engagement programs. The HKBM will also provide barrier-free facilities. So people, irrespective of their physical condition and economic condition, can take part in our programs and events. We also have various community programs to take the museum to the community. For venues with historical significance in Hong Kong, activities will be organized there. And we would also be integrating the Palace Museum culture together with the local culture, and there will also be different exhibitions held regularly. Well, in the last discussion, you showed a particular concern about integrating digital and art and technology and art. This is very much our priority. We will be establishing our own digital team to take forward work. We will also be working closely with artists, educators, designers, and the creative sectors to open up new ways of learning and experiencing art in a digital way. We will be using innovative approach to showcase our collections. There will also be various activities organized in our learning center. We have a very big digital venue to be established. So the multimedia programs in that learning center can be used by our students and young artists, and they can showcase their works. This is a learning center, so no admission ticket is required for using that learning center. Now, apart from that, we will also be launching a number of online learning programs. We have been paying attention to emerging new media platforms, especially social media platforms. So we would like to actually feature traditional Chinese arts and integrate them with our daily life. And then you may also notice that for the Palace Museums on the two places, they have a very good cultural enterprise sector. And the Palace Museum brand has been established within the community. There are two parts to our cultural enterprise. There will be 3 cafeterias, and on the 4th floor, there is a restaurant. Tendering is going on. We hope that the catering facilities can offer good experience for the visitors. So apart from visiting the exhibits, the visitors can also patronize the restaurants, which should be related to the Palace Museum in our themes. And there will also be a museum shop selling various merchandise. We will also be doing some creative work, manufacturing of some objects and also selling them off. And we are also studying using different channels and e-commerce platforms in Hong Kong, the mainland, and international community to bring our products to the international community. So we also held some stakeholder engagement activities, which ended in May. 11 activities were held, 3 among the education sector, including 1 in which 140 principals have participated. Well, we have had exchanges with them. They are very, they show great interest in the HKPM. So for these 11 activities, over 1,000 participants have given us very, very valuable views on how we should operate in the future. Now, recently, we have started an online Palace Museum Culture Lectures series. This is the first time that we are pulling in the experts and scholars from the Palace Museums of the 3 places, Taipei, Beijing, and Hong Kong. And so 3 culture lectures have been held, participated by some few hundred participants every time. Similar activities will be organized in the future. In July, we will be taking part in the Hong Kong Book Fair. There will be a booth to showcase the HKPM with the theme of creative learning. And together with another professor, we will be holding a lecture in the book fair to explore how HKBM can play a role in Hong Kong's future art scene. And in the Fine Art Asia 2021 in October, we will also be having a booth to introduce our work. That's so much for my briefing. So I'll open the floor to the members. This session should bring us to 5:30. So 4 minutes each, including answers and questions. Let me read out the names of the members first. Vincent Cheng, Ma Fong Kwok, Yu Si-wing, Kenneth Lau, and myself. So if you want to raise your hand, please do so now. Mr. Vincent Cheng first. Thank you, Chairman. I'm very happy to learn that the HKBM will be commissioned in a year's time. And the electrical members have visited the site. This is a very attractive place, and I believe that it is going to be a cultural hub, a new icon for Hong Kong. So that's good. I noticed recent newspaper articles. I know that the chairman yourself have some dialogues. I understand and agreed of the positioning of the HKBM, and I heard that there will also be liaison with museums overseas. There will be activities to be organized jointly. I welcome those. But then HKPM is to feature treasures from the nation loaned from the palace museums. This is very important. So we have to consider how to promote the understanding of young people on Chinese history and culture. So this is a great mission that we should achieve. So apart from on the international initiatives, how can we publicize more extensively the loaned items from the Palace Museum? Well, several years ago, we had this very famous painting borrowed from the Palace Museum. So can you let us know in advance what are the special items to be borrowed? And then Dr. Ng said that you are going to collaborate with different sectors. And there is one thing that I would like to particularly highlight. I've browsed the WKCD website myself, whether it's M+, and CG Center, Free Space, and so on. A lot of activities are coming on stream. And for CG Center, well, programs will be featured in September, October, and November. So how can you attract more people to visit WKCD? I'm very concerned about that. How can we attract people who've never visited WKCD and CG Center? So is there any further publicity, more publicity they can do? So can I ask the CEO to respond? I'll answer the second question. Mr. Chang raised a very important point. Before the commissioning of the HKPM, we should let the public know the important collections that we are featuring at the HKPM. And one of our priorities is that what are these 800 loaned items or objects? We would like to let the public know as soon as we can. But like what the paper said, the relevant authorities in the mainland are scrutinizing or approving the loan. So I hope that by September, these 800 objects can really be publicized. And we will hold briefings for the public once those are known. Apart from those, we are also preparing a series of major exhibitions after the commissioning of the HKPM. Some are from Europe, some are from Central Asia, and some from China. We are at the very late stage in our discussions. So hopefully by the end of this year, we can report the progress to you. And I think Mr. Zhang has a very good comment, and we will try to do more publicity.
Thank the members for making a visit to WKCD, so you're all familiar with it. Now that the pandemic has stabilized, we've been working very hard that coming in second half of 2021, we have a lot of programs lined up. even though the weather is quite hot outside, however, we will not stop for July and August. And for the arts park, there will be some busking on bicycle. When now coming with a vehicle that allow you to busk while you ride, that will have a touring the whole cultural district. And we will organize the televised opening ceremony and support the Olympic opening ceremony. We're not discussing with the Olympic Committee. Now that the pandemic stabilizes, let's say from July to August, like Mr. Chang said, to 2021-22, you probably received a booklet on performance lineup. And for October, we have the Free Space Music Festival. We'll hope to turn it into a world-class jazz celebration. Or Ryoshi can come to Hong Kong on November, that would be great. And the Amplus Museum opening on November, I'm sure that that will draw crowds. For the second half, WKCD will become a arts event magnet by 2022. The Palace Museum will ready to open. Like the director said, when the Palace Museum artifacts arrive in Hong Kong, we'll make sure we'll publicize to make the public focus their attention on the whole WKCD as a whole. Next, Mr. Ma Feng Kwok. Next year, the Hong Kong Palace Museum will open that will live up to the expectations of the Hong Kong community. So listening to the introduction by Dr. Ng, quite looking forward to the opening exhibition. A few questions here. For the 14th Five-Year Plan in Hong Kong has given the role as the arts and cultural exchange hub. And the chief executive for the past 2 months or so and reiterated that the HKPM will be a major facility for cultural exchanges. On the positioning, they'll adopt an innovative curatorial approach with a Hong Kong perspective and a global vision. So that's just a brief sentences. I hope that the director can interpret each phrase. What they mean by new curatorial approaches. I've been to the Beijing Palace Museum quite a few times, and they featured a lot of exhibitions adopting innovative approaches. For example, they have a good job selling highly marketable souvenirs. For on this position, how can we interpret that? Of these 3 lines, when we are implementing it, do we have any tacit coordination with the Palace Museum on how Hong Kong Palace Museum will go forward? Compared to Beijing Palace Museum, and do you have a clear division with Beijing? The director mentioned that we hope to amass our own collection, that you claim that you will set up a dedicated fund. So currently, how big will the fund be, and how do you plan to spend it? And what kind of collection you look into? As you know that these artifacts are very expensive. And how do these collection avoid competition with other museums and other kind of private collections? we have a lot of local art collectors. So what the strategy on acquisition and receiving donations? And thank you, Mr. Mao's question. On the dedicated fund, we yet to determine on the amount. In my introduction, like I said, that our collection in these few years shall rely on donation that will be related to the imperial court with modern creations. The looking future, we shall look for on fundraising and seeking sponsorship. Some of the sponsorship we may be interested in sponsoring our education activities or some on exhibitions. We hope we can direct some of these sponsorships to help this amass our own collection. As for the actual amount and how should we go forward, we still have time to polish it. The focus for the next few years will be on accepting donations. As for whether there will be setting a dedicated fund for the creation, I'll leave it to the managing director to decide. As for the Hong Kong perspective, combined with a global vision. When introducing the exhibitions, we'll commission Hong Kong curators. When interpreting this imperial court artifacts that show different from the Hong Kong and Beijing and Taipei, most of them start oriented from the art history or art perspective, and the Hong Kong curator was imagined from the Hong Kong daily life. They will look at these objects from the Hong Kong modern life. So what's the difference? What is the connection between is previous use and more depreciation? Was there any kind of a succession? Well, these local artists, they come from a different perspective. When interpreting the artifacts, they will not adopt a uniform perspective from other arts or history. They may interpret from a scientific perspective. And, well, Hong Kong past exhibition on Beijing artifacts tend to use historic artifacts and also combine with the experiences. We also will adopt multimedia to interpret these works. For the 14th Fifth-Year Plan, we'll probably introduce world cultures to China and also will take Chinese culture global. We'll conduct a lot of projects with the Hong Kong perspective to reinterpret Chinese traditional arts and culture. We hope that the arts can be exhibited to Hong Kong and to different parts of the world. So that's what I mean by Hong Kong perspective. Mr. Yu Shi-wing. Thank you, Chan. Even though the Palace Museum won't open until mid next year, my sector is quite concerned, and thank you, CEO, for setting up a meeting with us, with the 8 trade associations and the Travel Industry Council. I'm quite confident about the future of the Hong Kong PM. I hope that this museum can attract tourists from neighboring regions, especially the Greater Bay Area. Well, a lot of them may not able to fly to Beijing, or they may actually able to see more in the Hong Kong PM. This is a project huge historical significance. I have a question on the admission fees. Will it be very expensive? This is a self-financing museum. The Jockey Club only donates towards the construction costs, but not the operations expenditure. Would you see it as a welfare project or a self-financing project? And how will you control the crowds? And what's the maximum capacity? On the question of souvenirs, there will be mostly own creation. Will the Hong Kong PM able to sell the Beijing Museum artifacts, or we just create our own? the Tokyo Disney usually charge a royalty for the souvenirs. So in terms of the souvenir sales, what's connect? All the publicity will be royalty cost be incurred. All the docents. On the docents arrangements, will you be using the most advanced docent facilities? Well, in the mainland, people the docent will blast through their speakerphone, and how to be able to enjoy the audio introduction through their headphones. And also we consider training the tour guides and let them know the points to remember and how to use the equipment properly, and also give some background. At least we're giving the visitors a rudimentary knowledge before they enter the museum. Actually, I noted there were 5 questions altogether. Let me answer the last question. On the docent activities, I promised Mr. Yu that for the 6,000 tour guides, we'll provide training to all of them. I hope that all the local tour guides are familiar with the HKPM. For the technical problems, we'll develop new technologies that will not create a nuisance to other museum visitors. We need a docent introducing the artifacts. We'll offer audio recording while the visitors can listen to the audio introductions through the headsets or the apps. We'll consider adopting 5G technology where they can receive real-time information or interact with the artifacts. For the docent training, we'll train the students as docents. And also we train docents in the tourist sector. And on the development of our own souvenirs, it's quite important. As we're opening next year, maybe at the initial stages, maybe half or more products. We talk about 1,000. Let's say maybe 500 of those may come from the Palace Museum on both sides. We'll make sure that we'll scout for good quality and relevant souvenirs. We shall also work with different companies while they will do the design and manufacturing and sell on their website. However, we'll perform strict supervision so that these souvenirs will not cast a negative image. And some that will appoint Hong Kong young designers. Let's say for 1,000 type of souvenirs, how do they reflect the uniqueness of the HKPM? We need to discuss it with the Beijing PM. We need to pay for the royalties. At the last Board of Directors meeting, the Deputy Director claims it is not really from a financial perspective that we are working together to convey the values of the Palace Museum to the public. Most recently, in my conversation with the chairmen on the commercialization of the museum, well, we're not turning into commercial enterprise, but rather introduce a commercial element to all sorts of operations. Well, if some other souvenirs are popular, well, crowd control is important. The whole museum is about 30,000 square meters, and the gallery is about 7,000 to 8,000 square meters. We expect within 1 or 2 years' time, when tourism is back to normal, to expect over 2 million visitors a year. That will probably be the maximum capacity.
We consider that most visitors will, say, come around 11 a.m. or 2 to 3 p.m. So we need crowd management measures, we have to be mindful about the security of the visitors as well as the exhibits. So we're looking into whether there will be a sort of a triage system allowing different visitors to come at different hours. And for the admission policy and admission fee, it's going to be a complicated issue. We have to take care of the security of the exhibits. We are now considering different proposals. We will look at basket of factors in coming up with the admission fee, the affordability of the visitors, the sensitivity of different of the fee levels, the financial sustainability of the HKPM, and one of the very important principles is that people will not be will be denied of access because of lack of economic means. So there will be a lot of discounts and concessions, say to students, the elderly, low-income visitors, and so on. So overall, we are now considering the admission policies and admission fees. We still have 1 year to think about this. And for whether we would be financially or self-financed, well, a museum can never be self-financed. We have to count on other commercial projects, for example, hotels, offices, to cross-subsidize the operation of the HKPM. But we have to be recovering a certain ratio of the costs. We have to strike a balance. We can raise funds, we can seek donations and sponsorships, and we have the cultural enterprises, and we have the dining facilities, which can also be sources of revenue. We still have 1 more year, so we'll be looking and studying into our financial strategies. Mr. Kenneth Lau. Chairman, like many other members of the public, I look forward to the commissioning of the HKPM in the middle of next year. I have 3 questions or issues to raise. Admission fee. Well, the HKPM doesn't aim to make a profit, but we need income to support its operation. And admission fee is a way to control the number of visitors. If you don't charge a fee for the admission, then it will get very congested. So you have to come up with the admission fee based on various considerations. And then you may also think about ideas like a pass, membership card, and so on to control crowd. Second, on exhibits. Exhibits have to be very attractive in order to attract people. The paper says that for HKPM, it says that there will be over 800 loaned exhibits from the PM. And the list will be finalized following review and approval by the relevant authorities in the mainland. Apart from the Palace Museum in Beijing, you will also count on donations. So in the next several years, that will be done, right? I agree that you should also build up your own collections with your own unique characteristics. So I believe by doing that, you will be able to attract visitors locally and overseas. Now, for cultural enterprises and souvenirs, I think these will be very popular. For the Taipei Palace Museum and the Beijing Palace Museum, they are both faring very well in terms of the souvenirs they present. So I hope that you can also produce souvenirs with our own Hong Kong local characteristics. A lot of young people would like to actually put photos on their social media platform. I hope that you can do more on the social media platform in publicizing your souvenirs. So in the next half year, how are you going to publicize the HKPM so that you would let Hong Kong people and overseas tourists know about the HKPM? Dr. Ng, well, I welcome Mr. Lau's opinion. Membership system is a very good suggestion. going forward, we are going to launch the same. So in the next month, we'll present some proposals for the board to consider. We have different levels of members. For example, for one type of member, we'll charge them $500 to $600 in membership fee, and these members can come anytime for an unlimited number of times. Well, this is not so much for generating profits. These will become our fans, our die-hard fans. And then there will be a membership which will be charged with a higher fee, and these people would be willing to sponsor the operation of the HKPM. So all these proposals will be presented to the board for their consideration, and that can also help us sustain ourselves financially. You also referred to the e-commerce platform. We are also looking into that, but this is rather complicated because, number one, traditionally, for cultural organizations have not been joining the e-commerce platform for a long time. The British Museum and so on have done a lot in the mainland market when it comes to e-commerce platforms. But then the scene there is changing rapidly. Well, the market is changing rapidly. So any policy we draw up might become outdated very soon. So apart from looking at the Hong Kong market, we also have to be attaching importance to the mainland market as well as the international market. So we envisage that we will first draw up a policy, and then we will be talking to our various partners to design and sell such souvenir products. And for our own publicity strategy, around November this year, we will be launching publicity on a trial basis in some social media platforms on Facebook, say for example, Instagram. So we will try out some publicity initiatives there. And around March next year, we will kickstart our own website. And then later on, at WeChat platform on the mainland, we will do some work. So we will count on many new media, social media platforms to do our publicity. And we should tell stories on these platforms. We are going to have some 800 loaned exhibits. Each come with its own story, and it's a very good story. So how can we feature these stories and tell these stories to particularly the young people? So we will come up with a proposal to do that. So through such social media platforms, we'll deliver such stories to people of different backgrounds. And they might then be interested to come and visit the HKPM and buy our souvenir products. And going forward, we will establish our own marketing and sales team and digital marketing team as well. So these two teams will work together to do all these publicity and marketing work. Now it's my turn. I'd like to thank the WKCD team. I think the progress of the HKPM is very satisfactory. This is a much awaited initiative, and the local and international community are also looking forward to its commissioning. There are now 3 palace museums in the world now. One is in Beijing, and there are many collections in another palace museum. But in Hong Kong, our palace museum should carry our own local flavor. Especially, we can do well in actually be serving as a hub for arts and cultural exchanges between China and the Western world. And now I thank the Beijing Palace Museum for the support in our initiative. For the opening exhibitions, there are going to be a number of exhibitions. You will be selling the different products of the Palace Museum. And then we have a day inside the Forbidden City, and also portraits of emperors and empresses. These are good themes. And I'd like to focus on international collaboration. How can you attract international partners in working with us on themes in relation to an exhibit on Palace Museum? But this such is not being seen in the exhibitions on the list. Is it the case that you still have something up your sleeve and you haven't told us yet? Well, for the PowerPoint, we are talking about opening exhibitions for the number 8 and for the gallery 8 and 9. And this painting calligraphy from the Palace Museum will last for this exhibition will last for only 3 months. We have 30 exhibits, so 10 will be featured each month. And so after the exhibition, they have to be stored for 3 months before they can be exhibited again. And for art and culture of the horse, the exhibition will be on for 6 months. And then after that, there will be an exhibition. So from November this year to the end of next year, for our special, well, we have already planned for the exhibitions in our special exhibition galleries. And we are now in the final stage of the discussion of the exhibits and the relevant financial arrangement. The details to be announced towards the end of the year. Well, 3 exhibitions will be from the overseas countries. One is from the European royal families and one from the Middle East on ancient culture. So the exhibition will feature culture from the Bible and so on. And the 3rd exhibition is about design of contemporary arts and jewelry, and that was from the 19th century. So these 3 exhibitions are very different in nature. For the 3rd exhibition in particular, we attach a lot of importance on how the designs have incorporated elements from the Chinese culture. And after these 3 exhibitions, there will be a major exhibition on Chinese archaeology. So this is being discussed. The chairman, you just mentioned about how we will manifest the exchanges between the East and the West when it comes to the exhibitions. Well, we are planning some such exhibitions. In the art and culture of the horse, we will feature 118 horse sculptures from the mainland, and 16 will be from the Louvre Museum. So there will be a dialogue there. And we are also conceiving some exhibitions to work together with Italian museums. We will try to see if we can leverage on technology to interpret the paintings from the Renaissance and also from the Ming Dynasty. In China, there should be exchange between the 2 facets. So maybe there is a common language among the painters of the 2 different places in the same period. So these are new initiatives which have not been tried out in, say, the Beijing or the Taiwan Palace Museum. So we would like to bring such exhibitions with local characteristics to Hong Kong people. And after these exhibitions, maybe we can also take these exhibitions to the mainland as well. So we would like to, through such exhibitions, highlight how Hong Kong can help, can be turned into a cultural hub for exchanges between the East and West as outlined in the 14th five-year plan. So when the time is right, please make an announcement appropriately, because I think highlighting the content of the exhibitions is the best way to publicize such exhibitions. So at an appropriate time, please do publicize these exhibitions. Next one is Mr. Holden Chow.
Well, last time when when the subcommittee took a duty visit to the WKCD, we noted good progress and with detailed explanation. Just to want to ask for more details, I noticed that there will be a school partnership program with schools. Just a few pieces of advice. Well, to be more ambitious, for primary secondary schools, I suppose you cover both. For primary schools, for younger children, they'll be more impressionable on Chinese culture. That would be most preferred. Do you have a plan that on certain days, let's say in how many years' time, that to make sure that maybe for every primary school student you can enroll through the partnership programs. Either they can pay a physical visit or through other means. You can allow at least some participation, whether through visits or through your outreach activities. For the contents, beside the most old-fashioned visits, you consider giving the students something to do to engage them. As compared to a 2-hour tour for the artifacts and exhibition, while they roll up their sleeves to come up with a homework that you provided to schools. And after the visit, and they expect to do assignment related to the visit, that will really lead to better memory. Well, Ms. Feng mentioned about a busking vehicle. Now that I heard that you're trying to deploy innovative ways, would you consider enlisting the interested local buskers that can design some projects for them, allow them to participate or even collaborate with them? Well, some buskers are quite popular, and these audiences may be attracted and getting to know about your collections. I suppose you can hit two birds with one stone, while the busker gain in popularity. In the meantime, they also help to promote the Hong Kong Palace Museum. I suppose that is some promising direction. We have huge expectations for the HKPM. I know that you have done a lot already, and I know that there's still a lot of work waiting to be done. I hope that you can pull all stops on boosting the publicity. Please don't mind us at offering our own ideas on boosting the publicity to maximize the results. Well, the public have very high expectations of the museum. Okay, I'll let the director take a break. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Chow for catching on to our ideas. We hope to fuse a different type of performance and facilities. The museum is not just about the Palace Museum. We have to combine with the performing arts and different venues. For the busking you mentioned, can definitely be used as a publicity vehicle. And we also consider the Chinese traditional Sichu can combine with the Palace Museum as a form of expression. That's something we are brainstorming about. So we definitely adopt a modern interpretation of traditional Chinese culture to attract the younger generation. Instead of just rely on the young people, probably not too interested on the traditional artifacts. On the reaching out, besides coming to the museum for a visit, they probably need to queue for some time as we have a capacity cap. We've also been considering outreach activities. We're now considering a roving museum artifact clinic, and how do we bring antiques knowledge and conservation workshop. We're providing some kind of teaching materials, and our director can teach students at schools for primary or secondary and how to do a conservation and archaeological study. That will take our work further. I'll let the director continue. Mr. Chow has some very good points. Well, some of them have never been considered, therefore, as a huge reference value. Well, we are thinking about kindergarteners. Some kindergarten teachers told me that their student may not be able to understand the goings of the museum. We kind of consider brainstorming activities. We'll appoint the artist groups. Let's say we shall give 10 to 15 minutes of short drama before visiting. Let's say that you can commission the young artists to engage students at schools. Not only we can bring the museum to them, and also some passionate performances. Well, if we train the secondary school student to explain to their peers, maybe even better. Or we consider commissioning them to do some projects, especially on the artifacts conservation. When our vehicle arrives at the schools, not only the experts will be demonstrating, the student can also experience as well. Well, in schools, there are a lot of old rusty plaques. We can invite them how to polish those silver trophies. That is something that we will explore. As our team has just been formed, education will be our main focus. I've noted your advice will implement our programs. Thank you, Mr. Chow. Finally, Mr. Frankie Yik. The WKCD Authority's greatest success is to hire you as a director. His expression already got me excited that I can be in a museum someday. You are such a good salesman. Just now you mentioned that you will have a multimedia presentation. When the city you just launched in multimedia, they engaged an Australian artist for exhibition I made a visit. There's a 3D dimension allow you to blow up or shrink that image. As a visit, it's quite fun. Well, the artifact is just behind the glass, and where are the huge glass, I can't really examine in detail. Besides looking at the physical object, is there any way that I can look at it from a multi-dimensional way? Crowd control is important, especially for key exhibitions. I hate it when it's so full of crowds and my enthusiasm kind of cooled off quite a bit and you couldn't get them in close to artifacts. I hope you can set an appointment system, let you buy a ticket in advance and you set a capacity cap. Of course, there may be dozens, so people can wear their headphones. And perhaps you need to key in a number of the artifact and they will broadcast the introduction. I suppose that we should use our update when you get close, that the audio introduction can play itself instead of pressing the button, pressing the right number. Well, sometimes you can't really see the numbers clearly. I hope you can adopt a more humanistic approach. Well, I suppose that I can just listen to the introduction before I get close to the artifact. Once I can get near it, I can check out in close detail. Well, is there a way we can blow up the artifact's image? I hope you can work on the multimedia presentation. The director mentioned in Period 13 on the opening exhibitions that the special exhibition galleries thematic exhibition gallery devoted to vibrant art collecting culture and allow for and enter a dialogue. what do you mean by this, Director? There are a lot of my colleagues in the UBKCDA who are quite capable. I'm just one of them. Well, we're considering appointing a curator to, while he will recruit a multimedia artist. As the Chinese traditional culture will be a theme, an offering, and unique experience. Some that will be a textual, or some that will be images. Well, considering a commissioning 4 artists, which we will examine all the 800 pieces of artifacts to see which of the artifacts and the themes that will form a connection that, well, for the how the Hong Kong people express their understanding, appreciation of the artifact in a multimedia way. Well, let's say this artist is great with robotics, with interactive element. With some of the artifacts, let's say the Qing Dynasty Western clocks, there are different components. Well, we apply this principle in creating new artifacts and exhibits. Well, after check out the 5 perennial exhibitions, and then also we can check out a modern exhibit for a dialogue with the old artifacts. Well, there are a lot of interesting themes in traditional Chinese culture where they can recreate from the traditional. On crowd control, the appointment system is something we are considering. For the opening exhibitions, we'll set up an appointment system by designating a time slot so you don't need to queue. You can check out the exhibits comfortably. For our multimedia, that's our key focus. I believe that Siu professor was C.B. Shaw, or the exhibition on Kung Fu and Fire Dragons, and Dun Huang, wall painters. He's interpreting ancient artifacts through a modern technology. He's promised to work on the 3 artifacts. Well, we hope to let the world know about our excellent curators, especially using the PMSD platform. Permanent Secretary. Quite a few members asked the question on this cultural dialogue. This is the most frequent used technique. Have you been to the art museum? And now we have this La French-made surrealist exhibition. And this exhibition, they have engaged Hong Kong young artists after visiting the Pompidou Museum exhibition, and what kind of creation that can be sparked from the French exhibition. For the City professor, over a decade ago, he done the digitization of Dun Huang wall paintings. At some exhibitions, the LCSD integrated with the Dun Huang. Well, they have a project every few years, and they also have a modern dialogue. If you want to know what's about, you can check out the information, and it's something we are doing in the Cultural Museum. On the top floor of the Art Museum, there's also creation from local young artists as inspired by Hong Kong or local or foreign old artifacts.
Thank you, Permanent Secretary. I think that's it for this item. Members have been very enthusiastic in raising questions, and we're waiting eagerly for the commissioning of the HKPM. Under the leadership of the museum director, I hope that the Hong Kong PM will become a new icon in Hong Kong. The second item is update on the development of Zone 2 of the WKCD. So can we invite the relevant team to join us, please? Apart from the Permanent Secretary and the CEO, we also have Mr. Kenneth Wong, General Manager, Commercial, and Mr. Andrew Simpson, General Manager, Project Management, and Ms. Ying Feng Fong, Project Manager, HAB. And from the CEDD, we have Mr. Victor Chan, and CEDD, Chief Engineer South 2, Mr. Edmund Chan. So I'll hand over the floor to the administration and the WKCD. Perhaps I'll say a few words. In March last year, we thanked the Finance Committee of the LegCo for approving the $17.5 billion for the detailed design of the basement. This is the largest part in the integrated basement. Apart from ACF, there will also be HOR and RDE facilities in Zone 2. For the topside development of Zone 2, it is very important for the operation of the WKCD because museums and arts and cultural facilities can never be self-financed. So we need commercial elements to help us generate recurrent expenditure income to allow the WKCD to pay for the operation costs of arts and cultural facilities. The last point that I would like to make here is that we still have to seek funding for some other infrastructure works. Now, every time we come here, there is also the misunderstanding why $21.6 billion is not enough. Are you having cost overrun? Let me clarify this. The basement, the works at the basement are infrastructure works. So these are projects separate from the projects covered under the $21.6 billion. So I hope that you can have a correct understanding of the financial situation of WKCD. So I would now like to hand over the time to Mrs. Fong to update you on the progress of the development of Zone 2. And then I'll say a few words before I ask my colleague to take you through a PPT. Now, Zone 2 is very important to the development of WKCD. There are 3 zones, Zone 2A, 2B, and 2Z. For Zone 2A, the area is 200,000 square meters. So hence, the application for funding last year here at the LegCo. And for 2A, the piling works are going on. And for 2B and 2C, detailed design will commence soon. And for 2B and 2C, topside development, well, they are the major source of our finances. These include HOR and RDE, and 2C will house the ACF. The entire area, it's 450,000 square meters. And for the entire district, it's 810,000 square meters. So Zone 2 covers more than half of the total area. So we're looking at the possible proposals, and we will be handing over the underground facilities to be developed by the property developer. We will adopt a parallel approach in our development. In other words, the basement will also be worked on by the developers. The beauty of this is that the works can commence as soon as possible and can be completed as soon as possible. So this approach is better than the sequential approach, whereby the topside development can be completed 2 years earlier. And as a result, the WKCDA can share in the revenue 2 years earlier. And that the beauty of this is also that we can resolve problem in relation to interface risks, and we would have to be shouldering a lesser cost in terms of the infrastructure works. So I'll now hand over the time to Kenneth to update you on the progress of Zone 2. Thank you. Okay. Is it working? Can our staff members help? Mr. Wong, please. Excuse me. Yes, okay. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, members. I will briefly brief you on the latest development of Zone 2. In 2013, the CE in Council had approved a development plan for the district. So the IB will be constructed based on the development plan. And we are going to build an integrated basement. There are several major functions for the IB. We would like to create a vehicular-free environment. So up above the ground, it will be used mainly by the pedestrians, and below ground by vehicles. So we will be able to meet the statutory public open space requirement of not less than 23 hectares. The IB will also serve as the backbone infrastructure of the WKCD. So you are very familiar with this plan, the zoning plan. Like what Mrs. Fong said, for Zone 2, we are talking about 200,000 square meters in area, and that covers 2A, 2B, and 2C zones. And for 2A and 2B, these will mainly be used for commercial purposes, and for 2Z, various arts and cultural facilities will be housed and built there. For the IB, there will be 1,300 vehicle parking spaces and 26 coach parking spaces and 150 loading and unloading bays. So the IB is very important to the overall development of the WKCD. This photo shows the existing condition. Well, for 2A, the piling works have commenced, and the progress has been good. Over 1/4 of the works have been completed. And this other photo shows that at 2A, there will be a box of the XRL. So that can serve as a topside structure. So we can proceed faster at this area with the topside development. The development at Zone 2 is very important in helping with easing the financial burden of the WKCD. So the total GFA is 420,000 square feet, and 2A 200,000 square meters, and 2B 148,000 square meters. So in total, there will be generate a lot of income, which is important to the WKCD. So we've been trying to enhance the value of the topside development. Now, Zone 2A is relatively closer to the retail area, so that would be more retail and catering facilities. And for 2B, we are amalgamating the different smaller building sites to provide more efficient floor plates. And for 2C, there will be 3 major developments. 3 major cultural facilities will be put there, including the music center, the Great Theatre, and then the musical theatre. Well, depending on the finances in the future, these will be taken forward in phases. And for the music center, it will be the priority. We hope that that will be built as a priority. Originally, we would be adopting a sequential approach in our development there. But then there have been aspirations that the development of Zone 2 can be completed as soon as possible. So originally, we thought that WKCD would carry out the development in 2 phases. Phase 1, whereby the underground road and the IB will be completed, and then thereafter, the developers will come in and work on the topside development. But this approach is deemed rather slow, and there are also risks, interface risks to be involved. So we're thinking about doing it in a parallel approach, whereby the underground road and the basement will be developed by the property developer, and a tendering exercise will be conducted. And then the developer will serve as a contractor to build the IB as well as the underground road. So this is a parallel approach. So we would be advancing the completion of the project. And if the property developers can come in earlier, the beauty is that they will be coming up with a design of the basement which can match with the needs of the topside development. And some of the EMM facilities and also the ABWF works can also be taken up by the developers, and they will be funded by the developers as well. So we believe that this is a more efficient way of using the resources. So if we go by this parallel approach, our preliminary estimate is that the completion can be advanced by 2 years. But for the foundation works, that can be taken up by the property developer next year, and a tendering exercise to be conducted. And by 2025 and 2026, the IB Zone 2 and UR works will be completed in phases starting from 2025 to 26. And that is also the original schedule. And we hope that the developers can come in earlier and that the entire schedule can be shortened. And our target is to advance all the projects by about 2 years. So this is how we are going about working on the development there. So much for my presentation. Okay. So I'll open the floor to members. Every member will be given 4 minutes. Mr. Yu Si-wing. Thank you, Chairman. For Zone 2, you are asking the developer to work on the basement as well. I think this is feasible. I think that would be more consistent in terms of the 2 parts of the project. If the government works on the basement and it doesn't match the needs of the topside development, then the effectiveness or the efficiency of the project will be undermined. But I'm worried whether there is the problem of a monopoly, because on the topside development, you will have hotel, offices, residential, retail, dining, entertainment facilities. And if the developer will be building the basement as well as the topside development projects, will the developer then be controlling all the resources. And well, if the developer has all the information, will he be in an advantaged position in terms of bidding for other projects? How can you avoid the problem of monopoly? And then the question of funding. Well, if the developer can come in earlier, then it will ease the financial burden of the government. So would you consider asking the bidder or the property developer to put in some funding first, whether they can do it by borrowing a loan from the bank, so that the government do not have to continuously put in a lot of money and resources into the WKCD? Would you consider that?
For the third question, for the 2028 completion, well, now it's year 2021. Now that you plan to advance the completion timetable, does that mean that the offices and the hotels will be commissioned earlier? Well, it's a good thing if you can. Let's say by 2028, the developer would not commit any capital. Can the government have enough money to last till 2028 to meet all the infrastructure expenses? According to the administration, it seems they may need to apply for funding for LegCo. No. So are we glad that we have enough money to last till 2028? That's the least I want to happen. On the transport, on parking spaces, for a project this scale, have you considered there's enough parking spaces ready for vehicle parking or coaches parking? I don't see there's enough parking for coaches. For Zone 1 and 2, including the past museum, have you actually examined the parking situation in entire WKC? I hope you can prepare for that. Well, now that you seems that how many coaches parking and general parking for entire WKCD? Well, that will give a better picture of what kind of problem you'll be facing. Maybe I was a bit too quick. Let me clarify before letting WKCD to pick up. As for returning to LegCo for additional funding, and early this year, that you have agreed a funding to build a pier near M+. We note advance that there are remaining few projects in the infrastructure funding that require funding. For example, the lighting facilities on the south and the underground road connecting to the West Kowloon and the Museum Road. So that's the infrastructure enhancing accessibility. There's still one more time we need to come back to LegCo funding. So this is quite different from funding for topside development. So was there any delay? The government have agreed to the parallel approach, as I'm also the board member. This is a matter of incentive for the integrated basement. Like Mr. Mann said, this is a government entrusted project. Let's say we are taking the at Great Roads to underground. This the government public work entrusted the WKCDA. If we have two different developers for the basement and the topside development, that would be different. If the topside developer also responsible for the basement construction, there will be a huge incentive to complete the work as soon as possible. Well, as they need to, they need the topside development income to recoup the investment as soon as possible. This parallel approach reduces the incentive for delay. So this is definitely a huge benefit. And also, minimize mitigations or supplementary funding applications that may occur. For others, I'll hand over to WKCDA. I'll ask a question on monopoly and transport. For Zone 2A, we plan to construct a retail dining and entertainment center. Well, it could be as huge as Harbor City and Ocean Center and Ocean Terminal. That would be about 2 million square meters. I hope to adopt a single developer. If we break up the land parcel, there will be less impact. We need one management for higher commercial value. If we break up into different land parcels, there will be no synergy. For Zone 2B, is 148,000 square meter. According to the Foster design, there will be 7 to 8 smaller office buildings. We've done a market survey. It's hard to find a developer interested for such small land parcels. What we are proposing now, maybe Mr. Wang can go back to the slide. They're now into 4 larger land parcel that will be suitable for grade 8 offices. The 2B package will be handled by 1 or 2 developers. We have yet to decide them. We need to complete the market sounding out to gauge the interest first. The advantages that by handled by a less developer, there will be less a problem for interfacing. Well, for such huge basement, the more complicated we have more developers. On the lesser of 2 evil, we'll rather prefer a small number of developers. And probably there are not many developers able to handle a project of this scale. But probably the market will prefer larger land parcels. If we break up the land parcels, they may not, well, developers may not be interested. I know that Mr. Yu is quite interested in the public transport. For WKCD, there are about 1,700 car parking and 28 coach parkings, most of them under the integrated basement. Well, we don't expect everyone to come to the WKCD at the same time. For Zone 2C, the arts and cultural facilities, the performances are mostly at the evenings. For those who drive to WKCD, they collectively do office workers during the day. At night, the spaces will be vacated for the ACF facilities. So that's the normal car parking. For the coach parking, Mr. Yu is right. Our original design, we plan to concentrate on Zone 2. And now that the Palace Museum and the M Plus are getting ready, we secured about 20 loading and loading bays. We have briefed the travel industry and conduct a site visit on them. We'll try to identify more coaches loading and unloading bays. However, it's quite difficult to provide whole day parking. We have a lot of work arranging the entry and exiting so that the coaches will not be clogging the traffic. I hope that we'll continue to coordinate and liaise with the transport department. Okay, 2 things to follow up. Well, as the developer can handle the basement and the top side, would that provide liquidity for the government? Well, the government is nice to see it able to recoup their investment. If you can put the project up for tender early, that will give the impression that the government able to get some of the money back. That will be one more reason to support the KPCD. And well, I know that you need to consider the views of electoral members. As for the coaches parking, if you come up short, well, let's say you only allow for 2-hour parking. If you have a shortage, I'm afraid you will affect the whole Yau Ma Tei area. You need to talk to the TD. There will be a sufficient parking for normal vehicles, and yet the coach has been clogging the nearby traffic. You need to think hard about it. Let's let's say that you can have some flexible parking arrangements not limited to private vehicles. On the enhanced financial arrangements for the tendering for the hotel office and residential plots, well, they need to pay an advance sum to the government. In the tender document, request the developer to list out the amount we will receive. Of course, it will. The KCD will take a bigger share, while some money will be given to the government, instead of only rely on the government handouts. Mr. Frankie Yick. So Mr. Yu was concerned whether we are a monopoly, and you explained that Zone 2A and 2B are two project. 2A is integrated retail, dining, and entertainment, and for 2A mostly hotel and offices. Would you consider merging or separate? Now there are two separate tender. All right. Well, for the size, 200 and another over 1 million, I see it's quite okay. As you require them to handle the basement works, that should be reflected in the premium payment. We definitely get money. Well, you need to, the government and WKCD will split up the amount. For over 1 million square meters, divide into 4 plots. So for the floor plan for each building, how big for each floor? Mr. Wang? For office, the average floor plan will be around 20 to 30,000 square meter foot. Well, after merging, we can achieve this scale, and hopefully we can also push up the rent as well. For 4 towers, for each floor, they're probably 20 to 30,000. Well, I suppose it's all right for this size. But there's nothing particular. Just want to know how do you plan to split up the plots. I'll let Mr. Yu continue before my turn. One more question on transport. The pier. Now that the Yamate Pier is just provisional and they will be replaced by a permanent one, this is a very important pier. There will be a MTR and public transport and private vehicles. A ferry will be a key part on diverting passenger traffic. I know that from the China ferry terminal, well, like Mr. Feng mentioned, now that you have move it slightly forward to avoid obstructing the shipping channels. Will it be enough space for the ship to land? And can your completion able to tie in with the Palace Museum? Or probably HKPM is a bit hard. And which infrastructure expect the ferry completion to dovetail? I suppose that the Lyric Theater will complete in year 2024. Shortly after the opening, that the pier will be completed. Well, who can help to answer this question on the pier? Norman? Let me update on the latest situation. We had previously come to the subcommittee that under the Lyric Theater there will be a ferry pier. We had gazetted we have received a few objections and currently communicating with the objectors. If we can resolve them, hopefully that we can come to Legislative to apply for the construction costs. So by the end of this year, we can start the tendering. And to tie in with the simultaneous opening with the Lyric Theater complex. Mr. Yik, do you want a second round? I'm looking at the Zone 2A, 2B. For 2C, there'll be the performance venues. I expect that a lot of people will come a bit earlier and have dinner here before getting into their concerts or drama shows. It seems that if you swap the 2A and 2B land use will be appropriate. Well, as you only, after finishing your meeting, you just need to walk across the road to performance. I don't know how convenient will public transport be. If you turn 2A into office, then it will be closer to Canton Road, which is quite convenient for the office workers and those coming through MTR. That was just my idea.
If you look at the size of the two zones, then your original plan is better because it is wider in Zone 2A. But in terms of the use, and it seems that if we can swap the uses of Zone 2B and 2A, that would be better. So can I defer to my colleague from the WKCD? For Zone 2B, it's just not office buildings. There will also be dining facilities, especially along the avenue. On the ground floor, there will be a special gourmet to be featured. So you can actually dine there before you go to the performing venues. You said you've gazetted the pier. Who are the objectors? I'm curious. Nobody lives around the area, and there isn't any reclamation proposed. So why are they objecting? These individuals or groups may be concerned very much about the harbor, and there is an objector who says that, is it against the protection of harbor ordinance? Well, but we're not reclaiming any land. Exactly, yes. So we would try to explain to them. Maybe there is some sort of misunderstanding there. And there are other objectors asking us to build in more stairs and flight of steps so that the pier can get closer to the water. Well, this is not an objection, but anyway, well, their views are expressed in the form of an objection. So we hope that they can withdraw their objections. But anyway, you are going to handle those, right? What matters most is the stakeholders, the ferry operators have accepted your proposal. So I really don't follow why people are still objecting. Maybe these people are just misunderstanding our proposal. Have misunderstood our proposal, rather. Well, let me also ask a question here. For the integrated basement, it is very important to the development of the WKCD. And finally, we are seeing some proposals here, concrete proposals. And I agree to your proposal of the developing the topside development together with the IB. Apart from actually speeding up the developments, I think a more consistent approach will result from such a parallel development approach. I think this is logical and reasonable. And I'm concerned about when the tendering exercise will be conducted. Because it is related to your finances. The WKCD wishes to leverage on the commercial facilities to sustain its operation costs on the cultural facilities. I believe that members are in support of your latest proposal. So when will be the tender exercise? What about the financing for the music center? Do you have any specific proposals in mind? We know that the ACE project has been aborted. So there have been two adjustments to 2 times of the ACE package. So I am not sure about whether you will be sticking to your plan for the music center. So can the WKCDA tell us categorically what is your positioning in relation to the ACF? Well, this situation is different from the M+ Museum. So do you have a timetable for these arts and cultural facilities now? Thank you, Chairman. About the tendering for Zone 2A, we plan to put up a tender in 2022. But before that, and at P 31, 32, 34 at the Lyrics Theatre, the tender exercise will be conducted in the latter half of this year. That will be done first before we go to 2A and then 2B. And for 2B, it will happen. The tender will happen in 2023. Now, as for the music center, well, for the batch 3 of the ACF, well, the $26.1 billion will not be able to support the construction of the batch 3. So after the commercial developments have been implemented, can we have sufficient funds to build the batch 3 arts and cultural facilities? But it's definitely our plan that the music center will follow the lyric theater to be built, because the music sector has been looking forward to that. I can't tell you a specific day yet, but actually the will is there to build the music center. So we'll have to look at the funds generated from the commercial facilities before we decide on when we can build the music center. But if there are sufficient funds, we will proceed with the music center as soon as we can. But it doesn't mean that we are not sitting on our hands now. And the Performing Arts Group under the WKCD is now doing preparatory work. We are looking into commissioning consultancies to conduct studies on the acoustics arrangements for the music center. So I think you have given me a clear timetable, as pointed out by Mr. Frankie Yik. So after you have tendered out 3A and 2A, then you can consider the matter further. Maybe you need to make adjustments on the location and the scale of the music center. I hope that what was originally planned can really happen. I would like to seek a clarification. For T2B2C, would you be selling the plot at one go? No. Well, for Zone 2A is 2022, so these will be dealt with separately. Well, we are using the BOT model. So say 50 years, later they will transfer the facility back to you. No, it's 50 years. It's 30 to 40 years. So we'll be sharing the revenue with them on an annual basis. Well, I am just wondering, how would you make sure that you have a steady source of revenue? All right, I got it now. So let me say one more thing. Apart from the music center, I hope that the great theater can also be built. We need a permanent facility, and only by that can we promote drama and theatrical performances, and the ticket prices can also be pushed down. For the Great Theatre in the City Center, it has a 1,074 seats, but for the Great Theatre, we'll have 1,450 seats, and we would be allowing musical groups from overseas and the Hong Kong repertory to stage performances in these theatres. So this is an approach very different from the approach of the LCSD in renting out the performing venues. Mr. Frankie Yik seems very worried that the artists and artist groups will not be able to recover their costs, because they have to spend a lot on staging the pop-ups and the dramas, and only by staging performances for a long period of time can they recover the costs. And For LCSD venues, the performing arts groups can only perform for a short period because we have to be mindful about the even distribution of resources. But after the WKCD facilities have been commissioned, we will talk to the LCSD over the future arrangements. The WKCDA is a statutory body, but it has a lot of freedom in doing things they want to do. But after all, this is public money, and for LCSD, there will be new facilities to be built in the new territories in Kowloon, and some of the existing venues of the LCSD will be refurbished. So after more venues have been constructed, the WKCDA has to talk to the LCSD to satisfy the needs of the performing arts sector. So in the next few years, there will be a major shift in the strategies because we are running short of venues now, and in the short term, things cannot be changed. So I, of course, understand the present situation, but since we are going to have new facilities, I hope that the performing arts groups can perform for a longer period. And if that can be done, the ticket prices can be lowered, and such performances can also get more popular or be popularized. So I think we are all done with our questions. So I'd like to thank everyone here, and I hope that the tendering for Zone 3B will proceed smoothly. All right, next item, AOB. If there is no AOB, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.